So really, as a teacher candidate, you're a second language learner of Kiowa, right? And for a lot of us, we might have grown up hearing Kiowa, but now we're really interested in learning Kiowa. And so you're a second language learner and a second language adult learner, which really acknowledging that is important. Also, as a teacher candidate, you are the future Kiowa language instructors. And so as teacher candidates, you're going to go out there and create the future of our Kiowa language for Kiowa people. And so no pressure, but you know, your dedication and your commitment is so important and so appreciated because you really represent the intersection of the future of our language. And eventually, as a teacher candidate, you will have the opportunity to become a certified Kiowa language teacher at whatever grade level that you'll be certified in, as Tony talked about. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are out there for you as a teacher candidate. And I wanted to share with you, and we'll go ahead and share these resources as a follow-up afterwards, but really thinking about what does it mean to be prepared to teach? Really digging a little bit deeper into some of the terms that Tony mentioned in her presentation. So getting into this idea of how do you teach? How do you teach the ages of the children that you're planning to work with or students? Because, you know, thinking about all age groups, from infants, from your babies, all the way up through adults in the community and all the different settings that you have. And so there's a few videos out there that are available on YouTube, and I have the links here that really share some best practices and what the latest research says in how you might, as a teacher and as especially as an Indigenous language teacher, as a Kiowa language teacher, really think about how do you teach through Kiowa eyes? How do you teach whatever the topic is through Kiowa? And that's all about the pedagogy, and that's all about how do you do it? And how do you engage your learners as well? So there's some really interesting videos, and they're kind of short. They're like from 2 minutes to 8 minutes long. So we'll go ahead and send those out just for your viewing pleasure at some point. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the history of the Kiowa Language and Culture Revitalization Program. So the whole process of writing the grant, it actually was the 4th time that the Kiowa tribe had attempted to apply for that ANA funding before we finally were able to get it. So back when this grant was written, I was the director of the Kiowa Child Care Program, and I worked with a lot of other language advocates around Oklahoma, really thinking about how do we effectively learn our language and how do we pass the language down to the children, right? So that's the problem. That's why our language is endangered, is that at some point, Kiowa language stopped being spoken, right? It stopped being transmitted in the home from the parents to the children. And so now language revitalization, part of what you're doing is really working to restore that and to bring that back. So make the language a living language again that we use everywhere in any context or domain that we have in our environment. And so one of the things that I wanted to share is this is a model that the whole entire idea for this Kiowa Language and Culture Revitalization Program came from. And so this idea for this type of a program emerged from the Kiowa children's parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and elders long time ago, about 8 years ago, who got together and really wanted to have the children learn Kiowa. And this was in the Anadarko area. We had the Kiowa Child Care Center in Anadarko, and really wanted to basically prove that we didn't need federal funding to be successful in revitalizing our language. And going a step further, we also wanted to prove that not only would we engage in language revitalization, we would engage in language immersion instruction. And so I just wanted to share this. This is a model that was developed by my team at the time, working with the instructional designers at the University of Oklahoma. This came out of a class project, and it actually became the basis for the way the grant was written. So what you have here on the screen, you have the learner in the middle. And the learner is any one of these groups of people. The learner can be the child, the learner can be the teacher, the learner can be a parent or an adult, and the learner can also be an elder, because there's a lot of learning going on in these interactions. And the learning takes place within the context around us. So it's wherever we interact with people. That could be in a classroom, it could be at home, it could be in the community, it could be at a ceremony, it could be wherever. And also learning, it happens through, Tony mentioned pedagogy. So learning happens through modeling, through mentoring, through scaffolding, through providing tools and resources to be able to share the knowledge about the language and about our culture. And then of course, learning happens within the context of the language. And the language represents our Kiowa perspective, our worldview of how we as Kiowa people see the world. And that is embedded in the larger culture and the larger perspective in our ways of knowing, the way, our philosophy and all the ways that we see things. And so that's kind of a model for the way that this program was designed in the beginning. And so that's why there are so many different moving pieces, because as you can see, there's students that are learners. As a teacher candidate, you're doing multiple things. You're learning how to teach, but you're also learning the language. And you're also thinking about putting things together so that then you can become a teacher and pass that down. And then our elders, our elder mentors play such a crucial role, because our elder mentors, they're our wisdom keepers, they're our knowledge keepers. They have our language, and we are just so honored to be able to have access to our elders and be able to learn from them. And then of course we have the community. You have parents, you have community members, and they also are interested in what's going on with the program. And so it's really important through these outreach activities to engage the community. So really thinking about how do you raise awareness about Kiowa language and revitalization, and why is it so important? Why does it matter? So those are some of the things to think about as a teacher candidate. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit about the language learning process. And these are things that, again, this is a model thinking about the elder mentor, the teacher candidate, and the child or the learner. And really thinking about all the roles that you play when you're engaging in these language learning and instructional situations. So on the top row, you'll see the orange, that's the elder's role. And the elders are there to model for us. They're also there to kind of correct us and make sure we're saying things correctly, right? And also they're there to ensure that we are learning things and teaching things from a Kiowa perspective. In the blue, you'll see the teacher's role. So as a teacher candidate, those are some of the things that you'll be responsible for as you're developing all your lesson plans and eventually teaching those lesson plans in whatever setting that you choose to teach in. And then finally, the child or the learner is going to be receiving all of that knowledge, and they're going to be practicing, and they're going to be really thinking about ways to continue building their learning, their knowledge in that context that you're teaching in. And then this is another way to see the whole process. So I wanted to, Tony mentioned the elder mentor sessions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how the elder mentor sessions connect to you developing a lesson plan, which then you would use with students, with learners, in whatever age group you're working with. So it starts here in the middle. It starts with the teacher talking with your elder mentor. So the teacher candidate is going to, you're going to have these elder mentor sessions. So as a teacher candidate, what do you bring to these sessions? Well, maybe you're a parent like me and like many of us, and maybe we see something that our kids are doing, like we want to talk about washing our hands with our kids, or maybe we want our kids to learn how to pray in Kiowa, or maybe you see some high school students and you're like, hey, let's get them to, they're really interested in talking about football or playing a game. So now you want to kind of think about what is the language that we need to talk about that. So as a teacher candidate, you'll bring those ideas to your elder mentor in your elder mentor sessions. And you'll ask them, hey, how do I say, right? So Tony talked about the how do I say, and that is a very helpful, useful tool to be able to support you in taking notes and documenting all of the ways and the language that you want to learn and capture for your lesson plans. So then going to take that knowledge that you'll get from your elder mentors, and then you're going to create your lesson plan, right? So, you know, we might have like for me, I did a lesson plan around colors. And so I was like, well, how do I talk about colors? I want to play this color game, but I don't know how to say that. And so I wrote out the questions in English and what I wanted to say. And then I asked my elder mentor, and then I wrote out the Kiowa language and came up with my lesson plan and activity. And then you're going to actually take your lesson plan and you're going to deliver it. You're going to teach it. You're going to use it in whatever age group you're working with. So if you're teaching in the high school, you'll teach it with your high school students. If you're in the child care center or the Head Start, you're going to implement it in the classroom. If you're in the community, you'll use it in one of your, maybe a community outreach, a community class. And so you're going to deliver the activity and you're going to teach the learner. Then the learner, and in this case, if you're thinking about children, K through 12, or infants up through seniors in high school, those children are going to take that knowledge. So maybe it's a new song you learned, or they learned, and they're going to go home and start using it at home with their parents. And their parents, who may or may not be familiar with Kiowa, if they're not familiar with Kiowa, they might be asking you as the teacher, hey, what's my kid saying? What's that song they're singing? I really want to know what they're saying. And then that parent is going to get engaged, to be interested in learning Kiowa. And they're going to start coming to you as the teacher and get excited. They're going to be like, hey, I want, give me a translation. My kid wants to learn more songs. And then you got interest. And that's the spark. That's the catalyst for beginning to repair that broken cycle of language transmission in the home from the parent to the child. And as the teacher, that is a very powerful role that you play in that process. So then you'll be observing the children. So as you're doing a plan, maybe you're playing a game as part of in the classroom, maybe you're leading a conversation or a dialogue. You'll be observing your learners, right? If they're an infant, you'll be watching for nonverbal cues and how they're responding. If they're a high school student or a college student, you'll be listening for the way that they're pronouncing things and if they're understanding the context. And you'll document it. You'll make notes. You'll do some type of assessment for those learners. And then you'll also be watching those learners for new ideas. So you might see that, hey, these guys want to learn how to make samki, how to put together some of our pounded meat for a meeting, and we want to do it all in Kiowa. So then that's another idea, and you're going to go back to your elder mentor in your elder mentor session and take those ideas and start the whole cycle all over again. So I just wanted to share that as kind of why we have the program set up the way it is, because it's set up to be able to reach all these different groups of people, to engage everyone in this project of language revitalization and bringing our language back to life so that we can use it in any situation that we encounter. So I wanted to mention the how do I say, and I know Tony already covered this. So I would really encourage you to get familiar with the how do I say process. It's really, it was, the Indigenous Language Institute worked with tribes from across the country to build a way, an approach to facilitate second language learning of their Indigenous language. and doing it in a way that is very open-ended and in a way that is flexible, so that you as a learner, as a second language learner, you can decide what you're most interested in and what you think your learners, your students are going to be interested in, and focus on that language. And so here on this screen, there are several YouTube videos on how to implement and use the How Do I Say workbook. And so these videos are really quick. They're like 2 minutes to about 7 or 8 minutes. And those are the first 5 videos that you see. Those were actually developed by the Indigenous Language Institute. And so I'd really encourage you to put them on your headset, or while you're doing something, or you're driving, listen to them. They're really, really useful because you'll learn some ideas on how to use that workbook. And then if you're really curious and you want to hear how other tribes have used the How Do I Say approach, then I'd recommend the last 2 videos, which are a little bit longer. One of them is 28 minutes, and then the last one is about an hour. And these are actually sessions that were presented at one of the Indigenous Language Institute conferences and their trainings that they do over in New Mexico. And the one I wanted to mention, if you're really curious, like how another tribe has done this, the one that is the second to last video by Peter Hill talks about the Lakota Language Immersion Childcare Program and how he built a community of second language speakers of Lakota language by using the How Do I Say method. And guess what? Those teachers went from not knowing any Lakota at all within a couple years to get to the point where they can deliver an entire school day for children ages 0 to 5 completely in Lakota language. So it's very possible, it's been done. And so I have full confidence that, you know, what you're doing here is the start of something big. It's the start of something more. And it's the start of the future for our Kiowa people. So no pressure. So I wanted to go into getting into the specifics about what is the paperwork that you have to be doing. And some of you that have been with us, you know, like kind of you're familiar with some of these things, but I just wanted to mention these. So for those of you who are new, what we want to do is really important. This is a federal grant. So it's federal funding through the Administration for Native Americans. And because of that, it's all about accountability. So the Kiowa tribe said they're going to be doing these different objectives, the 3 objectives that Dawn talked about in the beginning. And the way that we document them is really crucial. So it's also really important that you as a teacher candidate keep track of what activities you're focusing on as a teacher candidate. So on the screen, you see just an example. So there is an Excel spreadsheet that you'll be tracking weekly and submitting monthly your hours log. And so on your hours log, and when you get those contracts that Lily talked about, when you read through the contract, you'll see, oh, hey, there's these activities I got to document. So a couple of these activities are, first of all, you are committing to attend your elder mentor language sessions. Those happen weekly, and they're 2 hours in the evening every week in your area. And so those, you'll definitely need to track those 2 hours every week. And that's, if you can see, I know it's kind of small, but those are called sessions in this Excel spreadsheet. The next thing that you'll want to document is if there is a Kiowa language community class in your area, then that you also want to attend. So this is separate from your mentor session. Like I know USAO does the Kiowa Clemente class. And so if you want to attend a class in your community, or if there, you know, I know OU has Kiowa language classes. So you would document the hours that you spend in that class on this sheet. So basically this hours log is going to be your proof that you're really working to learn Kiowa language. And it's all about the time and effort that you put into learning. The next thing you'll see, a lot of these say HMWRK, and that means homework. And so as a teacher candidate and as a language learner, we have to put a lot of time into learning, right? So Tony mentioned the workbook you have. There's a ton of resources. A lot of those resources are going to come on your iPads that you're going to get. And I'm sure there'll be an additional training in the future to walk you through how to access all of the resources that are out there. But that's what homework is. Homework on your hours log is going to be the time that you spent to read through the resources that are out there and focus on learning the language. There's lots of different things you can focus on. And so that's really your time that you're going to document every week on what you're doing to learn the language. And you can see you don't have to write too much detail. You really just need to document the time that you're working on it and then how many hours, and it automatically calculates the hours at the end of the month. So just wanted to mention that. And again, this Excel sheet will be emailed to all of you so you can start documenting your hours starting with the month of August. And you can actually count this session as one of your first sessions if you're a new teacher candidate. So we'd want to make sure you put that on your Excel spreadsheet. And then Lily and Robin, so what you would do is you would make sure to submit your hours log every month. And you can submit it by either taking a screenshot of your completed sheet or sending an email to Lily and copying Robin over at the main office. And that way they can make sure that that's in the system and you can get your incentive. And I just wanted to see, Lily, did you have anything to add about that piece on submitting the hours? Okay. I don't hear anything, so I'll go ahead and continue. All right, so the next thing is you'll see the teacher candidate orientation checklist. All right, so this basically is a summary of what is in your contract. And so this is the first piece of your official teacher candidate proficiency portfolio. Tony mentioned the conversations that have been happening with the Department of Education and the world languages in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, did you want to talk about the meeting?
No, everything was good from the previous slide you showed. So we'll just continue with what you're on now.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Lily. And I see there's a bunch of chat happening, so I'm going to get back to the chat after we get done. We're almost done here. Okay, so this checklist right here, like I said, is going to be the first piece to your proficiency portfolio. So what happens with teacher credentialing, and especially with a language proficiency credentialing, is you have to document and prove that you as a teacher candidate have the knowledge and the understanding in order to teach Kiowa language. And so part of the requirement is going to be this portfolio. And so this checklist here, like I said, is going to be your first piece. And this is what you will fill out. This will be good for this year. And so what you'll have to do is make sure that you're committing to attend those mentor sessions. You'll want to commit to participate in Kiowa language learning for a minimum of 5 hours per week during the school year. As a teacher candidate, you'll need to take a pre-assessment and a post-assessment to assess your current proficiency at the beginning and end of each year. And then you'll need to agree to document a minimum of 252 hours of Kiowa language learning per year. I know that number seems really daunting, but don't worry, it will fly by. So as long as you're documenting every week, so say you want to pull out one of the resources and you're going to study it and you're going to record yourself speaking, you can count that as hours of learning. So that's what that log sheet is going to do. The hours log is going to make sure that you're documenting all of those hours of learning. So at the end of the year, you'll have a minimum of 252 hours. Now, that's a maximum, so you can certainly go above and beyond that. but that's the minimum that we need, because the research in language learning, especially second language learning for adults, says that you need a minimum of 250 hours in order to progress to the next level of language understanding. And for you as a teacher candidate, the tricky part is when you're working with your students, whether they're babies or whether they're, you're gonna have to be one step ahead of those students. So that means your language learning is gonna need to be one step ahead of where your learners are at. And that's why it's really important to document your language learning each month. And hopefully if you do it each week, it won't be so hard. Also, another thing is, as a teacher candidate, you'll agree to maintain your educational credentials to teach the current level, the age group that you selected in your contract. Or you'll also agree to, if you don't have any credentials right now, you'll agree to look into getting credentials in order to teach in whatever setting you want to teach in. Like for instance, if you are working in a Head Start classroom or a childcare classroom, the minimum credential to be a teacher is to have a Child's Development Associate credential, a CDA, whatever age group, infants, toddlers, preschoolers. If you are working in a public school system, you'll need to make sure you are certified as a teacher in whatever subject that you're teaching in that public school system, or at whatever grade level that you choose. So those are kind of some of the things to start thinking about as you enter this final year, because you want to be prepared to go out there as soon as this program ends, and you can be prepared to go and teach at whatever level you would like to teach at. And then you're going to agree to uphold the standards of high quality teaching and learning according to KLCRP. So what Tony mentioned about the pedagogy and making sure that everything you're doing is from the Kiowa perspective, those are things that you'll agree to maintain and uphold when you go out into the community and in your classrooms and start working with your learners and your students. Also, you'll be developing an annual individual professional development plan. So what that means is you'll sit down and you'll think about what are some trainings or some topics or classes that you would really like to accomplish by the end of the year. So maybe you want to enroll in a Kiowa language class at one of the universities, or maybe you want to go and get that infant toddler CDA. So your professional development plan will be something that you'll come up with, and you'll complete it and fill it out and turn it into Lily and Robin so they can document it in your folder. And then you're going to agree to begin student instructional sessions by the second year of participation. So really thinking about being prepared to go into a classroom or a community setting and being ready to teach Kiowa. And that's what we are here to do, is make sure you feel equipped to do that. A little bit more about the next checklist. This is the annual professional development checklist. And so this is, again, going to go in your portfolio, and it's going to basically indicate, and you can sign off on it, that you've completed all these pieces to officially be a teacher candidate. You're going to complete and sign all of the orientation forms, like your agreement. You're also going to fill out your professional development plan. You'll need to go on and do your proficiency assessment, which is on Google. It's a Google form. It's pretty easy to take. You'll need to agree to attend your elder mentor sessions in whatever area you're located in. And then you'll also need to start, have your plan for your individual Kiowa language learning. And that we can go into that more later. You'll also need to start compiling your proficiency portfolio. You'll also need to start documenting and start turning in, submitting your individual Kiowa language instruction session lesson plans. So those are the lesson plans that Tony was talking about. And Curtis, I know you mentioned you're working on a whole bunch of them. So those lesson plans, you'll need to start writing those out. So if you're new to the program, we'll sit down with you, and Tony said there'll be additional training to make sure you know exactly what's expected in that lesson plan. And then we're going to ensure that you have opportunities to actually teach at the age level that you chose to actually teach your lesson plan. So you can take that lesson plan that you submit and then go and teach it, whether it's at an outreach, whether it's at a virtual session, whether it's in a classroom. So we'll look for those type of opportunities and make sure that you have time to practice teaching your lesson plans. And then we're going to observe you. So as a teacher candidate, we'll be observing your progress and giving you feedback on where to improve. So those are some of the things to expect. So we mentioned observing. So again, as a teacher candidate, our elder mentors are going to be assessing you every week. So we wanted to just show you the Elder Mentor Session Report. So this is something we went over with the Elder Mentors yesterday. And so what they're going to do is they're going to be evaluating your language proficiency at the end of every session. So this is just a heads up for you. So just wanted to mention the 4 different constructs in this report. And so they'll be looking at the learner participation. So looking at listening for how engaged you are in the elder mentor sessions. They'll be looking at learner understanding. So if they talk to you and they use a Kiowa phrase with you, do you understand what they're saying? And also, do you respond to them when your elders are correcting you? So do you try to say it again in the way that they want you to say it? And then they're going to look at your pronunciation. So really listening for when you repeat the words that they're saying. So they'll be listening for that and they'll be assessing you. And then, as Tony mentioned, the Kiowa culture is such a key component and it's really the foundation of everything that we do. And so the mentors will be assessing, really thinking about your cultural conduct, making sure that you're abiding by our Kiowa cultural protocols, being respectful, observing the different protocols that we have, such as when we pray at the beginning and end of each session, those type of things. So I just wanted to mention that just as a heads up that that's something to expect. All right, so I also wanted to mention a little bit about the proficiency portfolio. So you will be provided with individual coaching. So we'll meet with each one of you individually to come up with your teacher candidate proficiency portfolio. So I would encourage you to start thinking and maybe even making a list of all the items that you can include in your portfolio. Some of you have already been teachers, and some of you may already have a portfolio available. So now the idea is you need to demonstrate your Kiowa language proficiency. And so you need to be able to demonstrate that to whoever might be observing and overseeing wherever you're going to teach. So if you're teaching in a public school,